Big wins for democracy everywhere you look today. Across the United States, Trump's MAGA machine just hit a wall, and here in Canada, one of Pierre Poilievre's own just walked out of his caucus to join Mark Carney's Liberals.
From California to Nova Scotia, voters and politicians are sending the same message. Enough with the chaos. It's time for the grown-ups to run things again.
So today, we're breaking down the U.S. election results, the Canadian floor crossing, and how California just changed the game for 2026. We'll also break down what it all means for the far-right movement that thought it was unstoppable.
Let's start in the USA, where democracy just staged a comeback. In Virginia, Democrats swept the race, winning by a landslide in a state Trump personally targeted.
Then, in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill, a Navy veteran, mom, and one of the most grounded politicians you'll ever hear, crushed her opponent. Her speech afterward, calm, hopeful, and refreshingly normal.
Right? No screaming about woke conspiracies or made-up scandals. Just a human being talking about lowering costs and restoring trust. After years of mega theatrics, it felt so revolutionary.
Now, sure, the right will say, well, those were blue states, New Jersey, Virginia, and New York. But these weren't polite little wins. These were landslides. Sherrill didn't just edge out her opponent, she crushed him by a bigger margin than Kamala Harris beat Trump there last year.
These races were not about partisanship. They were a referendum on competence. Voters didn't just hold their noses and vote Democrat. They showed up in bigger numbers than expected and said, "We want problem solvers, not provocateurs."
Democrats didn't win because they shouted louder. They won because they stopped shouting. They talked about jobs and bills, not wars over bathrooms.
New York City elected Zohran Mamdani, another landslide win. A progressive Democrat over both a Republican and Andrew Cuomo running as an independent strongman. Even the tough guy act is out of fashion.
And in Pennsylvania, voters kept a liberal majority on the state Supreme Court, protecting abortion rights. And Maine voters rejected a far-right ballot measure.
Everywhere Trump meddled, Republicans lost. Everywhere he promised energy prices will drop like never before, voters rolled their eyes and picked competence over chaos.
His Truth Social meltdowns before the elections were post after post about MAGA warriors, energy dominance, and vote Republican or your bills will triple. Well, guess what? Voters didn't buy it.
And Trump didn't just rant, he threatened to starve New York City of federal funds if voters picked Mamdani. He said it out loud, vote my way or else. Well, guess what? They voted their way anyway.
And that's the headline this week. Democracy isn't just alive, it's starting to throw punches.
And of course, Trump's reaction was exactly what you'd expect. 4 posts deep on Truth Social, all caps, and no self-awareness.
First, the ominous, "and so it begins," which sounds less like a president and more like a guy live tweeting the apocalypse.
Then he starts screaming about voter ID, mail-in ballots, the Supreme Court, and my personal favorite, terminate the filibuster.
Which is absolutely hilarious because when Democrats wanted to end the filibuster for voting rights, Republicans said it would destroy democracy. Now, he wants to torch it himself, well, because he lost Virginia?
And then the grand finale. He blamed the losses on, wait for it, Trump wasn't on the ballot. Yeah, Dawn, that's the point. The minute you're off the ballot, democracy starts to recover.
Between that and his threats to cut off funding to blue states, it's clear that the tantrum phase of MAGA politics is officially underway. The voters have moved on, though. He just hasn't figured that out yet.
The takeaway is simple. Democracy's not dying. It's exhausted, sure, but it's still fighting and voters are finally waking up again.
And while Americans were busy rejecting Trumpism at the polls, Canada had its own democratic earthquake. Conservative MP Chris D'Entremont, the former Deputy Speaker of the House, crossed the floor to join Mark Carney's Liberal government.
And that's not just some backbencher having a midlife crisis. That's a senior conservative saying, I'm done with the noise.
His official statement was actually quite thoughtful. After serious consideration and conversations with my constituents and my family, I came to a clear conclusion. There is a better path forward for our country and a better path forward for Acadie Annapolis.
And he said Carney's new budget, hits the priorities I've heard most in my riding: building strong community infrastructure and growing a stronger economy.
And isn't that exactly the point and what MPs are supposed to be doing? Listening to the people who sent them there. It's not about spite or left versus right. It's about representing your riding and actually improving people's lives. That's what leadership is supposed to look like.
And his words were simple but powerful. After 5 years of serving in opposition, the people of Acadie, Annapolis, and all Canadians know that the moment we face today needs all of us to lead, not with complaint, but with confidence in a strong future.
Totally. And he even went on. He said, "This is an important moment for the country to come together, and I'm looking forward to working with the Prime Minister to build the strong economic future that all our communities deserve."
We've been saying this for months. This is the moment for Canadians to pull together. You can disagree on policy, that's democracy. But the constant rage, the yelling, the us versus them garbage, it's tearing us apart.
We've said it before, and we'll keep saying it. Put country first. Debate, discuss, disagree, sure, but do it like grown-ups, because a united front makes us stronger, not weaker.
And that's the spirit of what D'Entremont said. It wasn't about switching teams, it was about showing leadership when it actually matters.
That's what most Canadians want. A government that builds, not one that blames. And right now, it's pretty clear who's doing which.
So it's not a rebellion, it's an alignment. He's saying, my party stopped listening and I'm going to where the work's getting done.
And maybe the Poilievres and Smiths of the world could learn a thing or two from that. Instead of stoking division and rage, maybe start listening to what people actually want, not lecturing them about what they should want.
Because politics isn't supposed to be a loyalty test, it's supposed to be a public service. You're elected to help people, not to audition for talk radio.
Politically, this is huge, because this move puts the Liberals just 2 seats away from a majority. And it tells every moderate conservative still clinging to reason it's okay to lead the circus.
And the timing couldn't be worse for Poilievre. Same day the budget dropped, same day he lost one of his most respected MPs. If democracy had a soundtrack, this week it'd be playing...
Duh, duh, duh.
Another one bites dust. Another one bites dust.
So, how did Poilievre respond to all of this? Well, he just fell back on his old playlist of slogans and empty promises and fixated on cutting the industrial carbon tax. You know, the one paid by the biggest polluters.
And then Poilievre goes on X ranting about Carney's massive deficit, which is hilarious because when he sat on Stephen Harper's cabinet, he voted for a $55 billion deficit, the biggest in Canadian history. And guess what? Adjusted for today's dollars, that's $77 billion. What a hypocrite.
Yep, that was fine when it bailed out Bay Street, but apparently spending to build homes and defend Canadian jobs is where he draws the line.
That's the thing, Dave. While everyone else is talking about jobs, growth, and stability, he's still yelling about carbon taxes like it's 2015. The country's moved on, PP. People want solutions, not your silly slogans.
And it didn't stop there. Down in the U.S., California voters also passed Proposition 50, the so-called Election Rigging Response Act.
That's the one that overrides their old congressional maps, basically undoing years of Republican gerrymandering tricks by redrawing districts to actually represent voters again.
And it wasn't even close. 65% voted yes. That's a landslide. California just told Trump's red state map riggers two can play at this game.
It's democracy fighting back with paperwork. They saw what happened in states like Florida and Texas, where the right carved up maps to cling to power and said, nope, not here, Donnie.
Governor Gavin Newsom summed it up perfectly on Threads. He said, "What happened here in California tonight is a victory for the people of this country. Trump's attempts to rig midterm elections are backfiring. His attempts to silence you are backfiring. His entire presidency is backfiring."
And he finished with, tonight, California made it clear. We're taking back our voice and democracy. When we act together, we win.
That could just as easily have been said here in Canada.
2 countries, same message. The far-right experiment is failing. People are tired of chaos, of corruption, of constant outrage.
So if you're keeping score, Virginia, New Jersey, New York, and now California. 4 for 4. All blue wins, all blowouts. These weren't narrow saves. They were voter uprisings in slow motion.
And here in Canada, the far-right experiment is cracking too. People are tired of the anger, the insults, and the performative outrage.
Progressives are crossing the aisle, not because they've suddenly fallen in love with the Liberals, but because they're done watching their party burn down the house to prove a point.
You said it, Dave. It's not about left versus right anymore. It's about serious versus stupid. Canada used to have pragmatic conservatives who actually believed in governing. People like Joe Clark, Kim Campbell, and even Brian Mulroney. You could disagree with them, but at least they showed up to solve problems.
Now we've got rage merchants auditioning for Fox News, while the rest of the country just wants someone to fix housing and healthcare. Maybe it's time we got back to the kind of conservatism that builds things, not burns them down.
Because when the center holds, democracy wins. And this week's, it's finally starting to hold again.
So when you zoom out, it's one story told in two countries. In the US, voters who sat out in 2024 came back. Independents, suburban women, first-time voters, all saying enough with the rage.
And in Canada, moderates are leaving the anger machine behind. They see a prime minister who's building homes, protecting jobs, and balancing the books, not picking fights with journalists.
The MAGA model is cracking. You can't govern a country by grievance forever. Because at some point, people remember that leadership isn't a rant, it's a responsibility.
And yesterday, democracy reminded everyone of that, quietly, decisively, and without apology.
And while D'Entremont made his move, insiders say the Liberals have been quietly knocking on the doors of other moderate conservatives. Now, there's no names yet, just a question. Am I still being heard?
Because in politics, silence can speak louder than a press conference. One confirmed shift becomes an open invitation to others. And that's the story we're going to keep an eye on.
So what do you think, Canada? Are we finally turning the page on chaos? Or do you think the rage machine still has a few gasps left in it?
Tell us in the comments and share this video with someone who needs a little hope that democracy still works.
Because while others are busy tearing things down, Canada, and maybe the world, is starting to rebuild.
We'll see you tomorrow, where we're going to dive into how Carney's budget is landing with global investors and pissing off the Trumps and Poilievres of the world.
Wow, that one's going to be fun.
It already is, Dave.
All right, A-Team, if you made it this far, you're officially part of the resistance to nonsense.
So you can grab our new merch, Keep Calm and Carney On, and Vive la Canada, right below the video.
And for the deeper dives, behind the scenes, notes, and rants too spicy for YouTube, head over to our Substack, Unfiltered North.
And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next episode. And share this one with someone who still believes that democracy can win.
Because it just did.
See you tomorrow.
Ciao.